Fantastic pitch. Ferdy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
So I was 20 years at Abbott Laboratories, mainly launching global brands such as Humira, including living in Singapore, covering emerging markets, and living in Russia, running a business there. And then 7 years now in startups with one exit in 2017. I'm always been addressed and fascinating in addressing rare diseases and high unmet needs. And depression is one of those right now.
You know, depression is such an important topic right now, especially coming out of the pandemic. Eric, you had some initial thoughts about the platform.
Yeah, you know, emerging technology is certainly one of my sweet spots. I think one of the things that I'd like to know, Ferdy, is tell me a little bit about how this is different than what the competition's doing. So
right now, as I mentioned, diagnosis is only done through surveys, which are subjective and oftentimes inaccurate. There are nothing else on the market right now to objectively diagnose depression. We'll be the first one for that. And so secondly, as far as treatment, there are genetic tests out there, but everyone that is familiar with the genetic test, it only gives you the probability of something happening. For example, if your children are 5'3", and the genetic test said they're going to be 5'8", we don't know. It's the same thing with the prescriptions of which antidepressant will be for which genetic genotypes for each person. Our test will be the first one to actually look at a biomarker and accurately tell which person, what dose, and which antidepressant is optimal for them. That's fascinating, and you know, only being about 5'8" and having an almost 5'10" 15-year-old daughter, I can certainly relate to how that can go differently. Harry, tell me a little bit more about what you want to know.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, it is such a widespread problem, and it affects so many demographics. One of the things I think would be interesting to hear more about is really what the go-to-market plan is. Who are you going to use or partner with to get access to those patients that may have depression or are looking to find out if they have depression?
So that's a good question, Harry. What we're finding out is that as a result of COVID, the main demographic that's impacted are the 18 to 24-year-olds. In fact, more than 60% of that category are affected. So we're looking at ways to drive awareness, number one, but then also drive a diagnosis for them. We'll be having an app so that way we can monitor their progress once they're diagnosed, once they're on treatment, and then how that progress goes over time. And that data will also continue to feed the AI. So that demographic is obviously one target. The second one are the 65-year-olds and up. They're also mainly impacted by COVID as well. And so with Medicare coverage, our managed care team is looking at that, and we're looking to get coverage for Medicare and Medicaid within the first 6 to 12 months.
Really interesting. So is this something that the therapists and the doctors are going to be treating?
So that's a good question. Diagnosis is going to be done from their doctors, obviously. They're going to be writing an order. But as far as driving awareness and taking ownership for your treatment, especially for depression, that falls on the patient. So we're going to have a top-down, bottom-up strategy, meaning from the doctors, we're going to drive awareness and where they can get the orders, and then from the patient side, driving awareness as far as where they could, which doctors are familiar with Ascertain, but then also driving the app, which will also further lead them to their appropriate care.
Ferdy, fascinating. Thank you so much for your presentation this evening. Obviously, gentlemen, a lot more to come, and we'll learn more about Ascertain in the coming weeks.